year is 1922. Europe is recovering from the bloody First World War, and no nation has been impacted this worse than Germany. Suffering from poverty, mass starvation, and economic collapse, the country found itself drowning in loans, and France was going to further destabilize the situation. But how did this happen? How did Germany come from a world superpower, a great empire, to smothering wreck in the course of 8 years? To find this answer, we will have to go back to 1922. At this time, Germany is still a strong power. It has signed an armistice with the Allies, but its end is nigh. Starting in late October, unrest spread across the country, and with Emperor Wilhelm fleeing to Holland, a republic was proclaimed. However, the civil conflict had not yet ended. With the formation of the German Communist Party, now came the rise of communist revolutionaries across the country in rebellion. Sailors mutinied, workers went on strike, and many others took up arms against the new unstable government. And an event known as the Spartacus Uprising occurred in Berlin, consisting of the German communists, though the movement spread to cities across Germany, where communist members fought government forces in the streets, only succeeding in implementing communism into Germany. However, government forces were successful in defeating the rebellion, though by now the newly reformed Republic of Weimar had taken its toll, finding itself facing economic destruction and poverty across the country, making the country weak and unable to defend itself against any invader. 3 years on, we come back to 1922, and Germany is still struggling to pay its war reparations. The French government is becoming impatient for its money, so they escalate the situation by marching troops into Germany and forcefully taking resources such as iron ore, coal, and steel, while the German army was left helpless, unable to resist or else start a world war again. German civilians were not treated humanely by the French soldiers during the occupation, who attacked locals on a daily basis for little given reasons, such as not showing enough gestures of respect when they marched past. The motive for this aggressive behavior towards innocent people was likely revenge for World War I. German citizens across the nation were disturbed by this, and the German leader himself, Wilhelm Kühner, called for the people to resist being banned from sending the German military to protect the Rhineland. The German government then voted to financially support the movement. The railroad industry refused to cooperate with the French, and the coal companies moved from the Ruhr region to Hamburg. That way, the occupiers had no access to files or personnel. German workers who were forced to mine out resources for the French weren't paid at all, practically being slaves, and they held demonstrations against this, which the French army crushed with an iron fist, only making the situation even worse. As seen here, thousands of Germans come together for the funeral of 32 German workers from a cook factory who worked off the job in protest and were massacred by French soldiers. Note how interesting it is to see all kinds of Germans united, capitalists and communists, republicans and monarchists, fascists and socialists, setting aside their differences in grief. And back in the Ruhr, the occupation continued, the French stepping up its military occupation by operating the railroads, punishing anyone who refused to cooperate and refusing to allow most German workers to even leave the area. Bands of German nationalists snuck in the occupied Ruhr and began to sabotage French equipment and communication devices, blowing up bridges to stop the resources from being sent to France. French military courts were then given the authority to sentence these partisans to death, and did so in some cases. After 2 further years of conflict and resistance, The United States of America and Britain intervened to set up the Dawes Commission to facilitate negotiations among the conflicting parties. They eventually reached an agreement to reduce Germany's debt and for French troops to finally leave the Ruhr. The French grudgingly agreed and the troops returned home to France, and with that, the occupation of the Ruhr was ended. This event would not, however, be forgotten in history. The Germans did make sure of that. The occupation was seen as a humiliation for Germany, and historians argued it was these terrible feelings which led the German people to vote for the National Socialist German Workers' Party and hence leading to the Second World War.